Good evening. Good evening, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being on the live. Tonight, we're going to discuss some breaking news. Breaking news that we're going to discuss. We're going to discuss, good evening. We're going to discuss tonight some key information on NATO, Iran war, NATO. We're also going to talk about the Strait of Hormuz, and we're going to go into details about the situation that's going on with the U.S. and the European allies. So that is what we're going to be discussing tonight. If you guys are interested in these topics, make sure to like and follow and share the live if you're interested in this comment. So tonight we're going to go over the cost. Many people discuss NATO and discuss how Spain, with Prime Minister Sanchez and some of the leaders of the European Union, how they have essentially decided to essentially block or close off some of the areas, some of the air, for example, some of the area for the United States to essentially be able to enter the airspace, and for example, in Spain, in Germany, and in France, right, with more requests from Italy, recent requests from Italy. So that's what we're going to discuss tonight. Is that we're seeing a very broken, very fractured NATO, right? An alliance that essentially was built in around 1949, the NATO alliance, which was essentially built pre or post Cold War to essentially help the European Union, right? So NATO is a cost, that has cost the United States, based on estimated numbers, somewhere between 200 billion to $2 trillion. That's the cost that NATO has cost the United States. So if we put this into perspective, like I said previously, we're talking of anywhere between $1,000 and $5,000 of U.S. citizens' money that's going into NATO and defensive budget on a year-on-year basis, right? That's what we're talking about tonight. So with that being said, if we're talking that we're having a budget, thank you guys for coming on the live. If we're talking that we have a situation where we have foreign allies that don't want to act like foreign allies, what's the reason that we're even spending our hard-earned money, right, into the defense of NATO? Initially, it was a good idea because it provided defense to Europeans when countries weren't as rich or had the defensive posture that they do now. But now it's like, what is actually even the reason to, right, to even invest our money into NATO, invest our dollars when they can't even do the same for us? And you guys seen it with President Trump, how essentially the war in Iran with the Strait of Hormuz, how 20% of the world's oil is through the Strait of Hormuz. Mostly it's European gas and oil, though, that is in the Strait of Hormuz. It's not really U.S., right? Because the U.S., we have Venezuela. We obviously have oil reserves in the U.S., with the U.S. And we have other access to oils from across the world. So it's not necessarily that, the Strait of Hormuz is for us, but that energy, what NATO's saying, it's not their war, right? You guys heard many representatives and prime ministers from the European Union who said that NATO is not their war, right, with Iran, when it comes to Iran. But this is the funny part. It is their war because, for one, you're part of NATO, right? So it's like, okay, what's the point of NATO then? Isn't the part of NATO to be a coalition, to be a team, right? U.S. and Europe working together for the benefit of the Western Hemisphere. So if NATO doesn't want to do that, what is the point of American citizens even paying into NATO, right? Because the whole point, right? The whole point of NATO is to provide protection from Russia and other foreign entities, right? It's the Western Front, right? So if we have this kind of partnership, and this is the funny part, we have this kind of partnership with NATO, who were spending money, right? Around 16 to 20% of the budget that goes into NATO is from US citizens, right? Thank you very much. So if this money is coming from us, US citizens, what the heck are the Europeans doing? Am I right? Because America, we're spending every single penny into these European wars. Oh, Kermer, the UK Prime Minister, he said that has nothing to do with England and the United Kingdom. Well, what does Ukraine have to do with Americans? What does NATO have to do with Americans? It's not for our safety. I'm a U.S. Marine. I can tell you, it's not for American safety. NATO is not for American safety. Is NATO for the Caribbean safety? No. Is NATO for Latin American safety? No. Is NATO for African safety? No. Who's NATO safety for? NATO is the safety for Europeans. So tell me why, okay? Tell me why Americans are paying for NATO when we get some benefits of a control, in the Western Hemisphere, but tell me why Americans, we have to pay for them, for Europeans, right? And they get free healthcare in their country. Obviously, they get taxed a lot more. But so here's the deal. Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, he's saying it has nothing to do with him. Motherfucker, it has everything to do with you because we're protecting your European asses. And the French are now saying, oh, no, it does not have to do anything with us. It has 100% to do with you. All the Europeans are now cowards because they get free benefits, right, that we're paying for. They get our money that we're paying. 350 million Americans are paying for Europeans to have what? Protection. Americans are paying 350 million Americans. We're paying for their protection every year. Oh, but no, that has nothing to do with us. But it does have something to do with you because we're paying for your energy. You weak ass, right? We're paying for your energy in Europe. We're paying for your security in Europe. So if we're paying for your security in Europe, it does have something to do with you. Everybody wants to go, oh no, is the Jews starting war a problem? Well, actually, it's not. Yeah, the Jews do stuff bad here and there, but they've been our longest partner since the 1940s. I'm not saying they're innocent. But here's the deal. The Strait of Hormuz and Hezbollah, right? They have attacked America for the last 40 years with no repercussions. Look at what Obama did. He sent them money. So here's the deal. What is actually NATO for, ladies and gentlemen? You tell me that. You tell me what is NATO for, and listen, I'll listen to what you have to say. But for tonight, you listen to what I have to say. NATO, France, England, Germany, you weak-ass mofos. Why are you telling America, you're telling Americans now, you're telling us here in America, oh, it has nothing to do with us. In Europe, when they're getting free healthcare, they're getting benefits, they're getting better quality foods. No, we're not going to pay for Europe anymore without any benefits for Americans. We're not going to pay for Europe unless you guys step it up. Your coward asses are not going to make us pay anymore for your protection. If you don't do nothing for Americans, we're not going to do nothing for you. And that's the end of it. And that's the end of the story. We have the strongest military in the world. We have the best system in the world, the best legal system in the world, the best Marines, Navy SEAL, Delta, Rangers in the world. What is Europe doing for America? Like JFK said, it's not what we can do for you. It's what Europe can do for us. It's what Europe can do for America. That's what JFK said. And I'm paraphrasing JFK. It's not what America could do for Europe anymore. It's what Europe can do for America, ladies and gentlemen. It's what Europe can do for America. Because we have hardworking people in America, and a lot of people in America don't get the many benefits that people in Europe get. There's a lot of benefits that people in Europe get that people in America do not get. Like free health care. When women get pregnant in America, what do they get? Nothing. But in Europe, they get 4 to 6 weeks of paternity leave, right? In Europe. They get 4 to 6 weeks of maternity leave in Europe, right? Maternity, I said paternity leave, but it's maternity leave in Europe for women when they get pregnant with their kids. So no, Europeans, we're not gonna pay for you anymore. You're gonna have to step your game up, put some skin in the game, right? You're gonna have to put some skin in the game and pay for your own damn security. We're not gonna protect you for free anymore. It's costing us money. We got kids. We got debt. We got expenses to cover in America. No, Europe, you're not gonna get a free ride anymore because you don't defend anyone. You just take from England. You take from Africa. You take from Americans, but you don't provide anything in return for Americans, Europe. All you do is whine and complain every single day. Europeans, all they do is whine and complain about their cheeses, the French eating croissants and drinking tea. But that's not, listen, America, we're a lot smarter now than we were 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 20 years ago. America, we're a lot smarter nowadays than we were 100 years ago, 50 and 75 years ago. America is for Americans now. We're not going to pay for anyone who's trying to take something off the top, skim off the top to Americans when we have people who are trying to pay for their college, for their kids, and pay their mortgages and go to school and graduate and get a job in America. We're not going to pay for your expenses, Europe. You're going to have to step out of your pocket. We have people in Europe traveling all the time, right? Oh no, we eating great food in Europe. While in America, we get some of the worst foods on the planet. And we're paying top dollar. If it wasn't for Trump, some of the medicines that we eat, that we get in America are the most expensive in the world until recently. So you tell me, why would we pay for Europe and NATO when they don't do nothing for us? No, forget that. You mofos in Europe better step your game up. You mofos in Europe better step your game up, right? Better do what you're supposed to do, because we're not spending $1,000 a year for the Pentagon and defense budget just for us to get an alliance with NATO. Yeah, I'm not saying we should break away from NATO, but this is what I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen. This is what I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen, and hear me clearly. NATO and Europe have to step their game up. For too many years, since the Cold War, we have literally spent on NATO over $2 trillion. We're spending around $700 million a year on NATO and defense. In America, we're spending $700 to $900 billion on defensive spending every single year. It's not all towards NATO, it's also for our defense, but we're spending $700 million a year towards NATO. So here's the deal. If these European countries are so scared to take their own energy and provide their own defense, maybe we don't need to be those kind of partners anymore. Maybe we have to restructure the agreements that we have, right? Ladies and gentlemen, if you like what I'm commenting, like and share and follow. If you like what I'm commenting, let me know what you guys are thinking while you are here in the live. But ladies and gentlemen, here's the deal. Here's the deal, ladies and gentlemen. Why are American citizens paying for every single thing from Europe when they have better healthcare than us? They have better food than us in Europe. They have better employment benefits than us in Europe, right? And they have a difference. Now, they pay a lot more in taxes, but they get a lot more services, right? They get defensive subsidies from the government, from the United States of America, right? The women, when they get pregnant, they get 4 to 8 weeks. They don't have to go to work. So they get a lot more benefits from their government, while Americans are working 2 to 3 jobs here in America just to pay for another country's defensive budget. No, we're not going to do that anymore, ladies and gentlemen. What we're going to do is we're going to cut our cost. We're going to cut our cost by 50 to 70%, right? We're going to cut our cost by 50 to 70% of what we spend, and they're going to get the bare minimum of what they should get. Because if they're not willing to step it up for us, why should we step it up for them? Is this clear, ladies and gentlemen? Please comment on the live and let me know if you guys are understanding what I'm saying. If NATO and Europe and the European Union and the UN does not want to work for a resolution to improve the conditions for Americans to pay less money, hey, it's nothing to do with us either now. Ukraine has nothing to do with us either, right? So what does Ukraine have to do with Americans? It's for their security from Russia, right? So don't come to us, right? Like they did with Biden. Remember what they did with Biden? Biden gave him $300 billion to a country supposedly destroyed. So let me ask you a question. What happened to the 40 to 80 billion that was missing? You guys remember that? You guys remember there was like 40 to 80 billion dollars that was missing? What happened to that money? Ladies and gentlemen, we have people in America that are working 2 to 3 jobs, right? Just to rent out an apartment. We have people in America that are going to school for 5, 10 years just to get a good job. And most of the time, a lot of these people that go to school and universities, they can't even land a good job anymore because everything is so expensive for them. They're not even able to land a job. And then we have people in Europe that are getting placed left and right with all these different things, getting opportunity after opportunity without even them doing anything. So here's what I have to say, you guys, ladies and gentlemen, tonight, is that do you believe that NATO is still beneficial for us here in America? Or do you guys believe that we need to change our position? That's the question for tonight. Do you guys believe that we should still have the same system that we had before with NATO? Or do you guys believe we should change our system? So I just want to hear from you guys tonight. Let me know what you think on that. I know, listen, I'm one of the most braggadocious, bold, I was in the service, so I'm going to say it like I say it. But I want to hear from you guys tonight because it feels to me, I'm looking at this from a military perspective, and I'm looking at this also now as a civilian, from a civilian perspective, and it's just the cost alone of what NATO cost America every single year. I know it does give us a strategic access point, but look what happened with Spain. You guys seen it with Spain where in Spain, right, they closed off the bases. They didn't want us to land our planes for America. Now Germany telling us to go home, one of the leaders in Germany. So, I mean, this is crazy, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, do you guys see what's going on? I just want you guys to respond and let me know if you guys are seeing what is going on right now. Because, listen, to me, right, this is what it looks like to me. And I'm going to be straight up with you guys. It looks like it's a money grab. To me, it looks like it's a money grab with the whole NATO thing. When they have 20 to 30 countries in Europe, it's like, they should be able to foot that bill on their own, right? You know what I'm saying? They want to be autonomous. Autonomous means they want to be on their own, but yet they don't want to foot the bill on their own. Okay, why can't America pay 5-7% then? Because look at Spain. Spain doesn't even want to pay 2.5% of GDP. So why are we spending 16 to 20% of the whole NATO budget when Spain doesn't even want to spend 2%, right? And it's for their benefit more than us, right? So if a country like Spain, for example, doesn't want to even spend 2% of the GDP, right? They have been off the rails for years. They don't want to spend 2%. They don't want to spend 3%, and they're supposed to spend 5%, right? That was the whole new proposition with the whole NATO and the defensive posture, right, and everything like that. So if NATO doesn't, guys, make sure to follow and like in the comment section so I know that you guys are engaging with me. It gives me a bit of energy and a break when I see comments and I can hear the comments and I can speak and I could give you guys more. You guys give me some, I give you guys some, right? It's reciprocal, right? It's like but it's not like an NBA game. You're going out there, sophisticality. Here is more, we're speaking. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, listen, NATO, like I said, is post the conflict that occurred, Cold War, right? And the defensive posture that we had, one of the reasons is for the defense of, the Western Hemisphere and that particular theater, right? Now, what we have tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is that we have a situation where we're starting to see the fracturing of NATO. right? We're starting to see the fracturing of NATO, the fracturing of our supposed allies in there in the Western region with the European countries, and we're starting to see a fracture. But this fracture is not a free fracture; it's a costly fracture because Americans, like I said earlier, we're spending billions and billions and billions of dollars with no end on NATO, right? And then now, when we're not even asking them to join the war. We didn't even ask Spain to join the war. We just told Spain, why don't you come in? Why don't you let us use your base? That's all we said. But Spain and Prime Minister Sanchez, hey, he don't want to let us even use our airspace of Spain. But guess what's the funny part? France was able to go into the Strait of Hormuz today and get some oil. Listen to this. France was able to get into the Strait of Hormuz today and get some oil. Isn't that wild, ladies and gentlemen? Isn't that wild, ladies and gentlemen? So here's the funny part, and I'm gonna say this with as much reverence as possible, right? Here's the funny part. When we have a situation, when we have a partnership, but then the partnership that we have, right, doesn't give us the benefits. It's like, let's say somebody's married. Let's say you're married, right? And then with the secretary of the DHS, former secretary, you're married and your wife doesn't want to give you anything, or your husband, right? Why are you married? You know what I'm saying? You don't have to be married. Why? Listen, you will never catch me outside. You will never catch me outside talking about I gotta give her 50% and then I'm staying with her. Listen, if she ever brings that up, I don't care what percentage it is. We're going to court the same day. We're going to court the same day and we're going to separate, right? So don't come to me talking about you want 50% of my goods, right? You want 50% of my goods, of my money? And then you now you want me to kiss your ass at the same time? No. We're going to court the same day and filing that. I don't care. I'll get more money, but you're not going to hold me hostage or blackmail me. Listen, if anybody's holding you hostage for money, you got to end that. You got to end that. And that's what's going on with Europe and NATO. They're trying to hold us hostage, right? They're trying to hold us to our money. You know, NATO, that's what it seems like to me. It's like a scam, right? It's like one of these high-end scams where we have European countries telling us, oh, here's the benefit of the USA going into business with Europe. Well, there is no benefit because all the benefits goes back to Europe, right? So the benefit of going into business with Europe is that the money stays in Europe. Isn't that hilarious? The benefit of us investing into NATO is that they get to keep everything. So that sounds like a Ponzi scheme to me, right? That sounds like a Ponzi scheme to me. So if we're investing money, we should be able to partake of the investment, right? It's not like what happened 20 years ago with that guy who did the investment scam where he was telling people, oh yeah, invest, and then at some time you're going to be able to take out your money. No, that's not an investment. That's a straight up scam. Because an investment, when you invest, like I have businesses and I tell people, you invest, I'm going to show you exactly what I'm putting my money into, right? When I invest, real estate, when I invest in shares, mutual funds, whatever, stocks or crypto, we can see what we actually invested in. Now, are we always going to win? No. And anybody who tells you you're always going to win is a liar. Like I have films, right? I'm producing films with Hollywood actors like Mars Descent and stuff like that. And I tell investors right now, look, you guys are going to invest. I'm going to make the movie for cheap. And the benefit of that is even if we only break even, you're going to get your money plus a little bit more, right? Or just get your money back. But that's an investment because you're seeing that we're actually producing an asset, right? Or if you're buying real estate, like I told my brother when my father was alive, my father passed away last year. And I told my brother, no, invest in some land. Put 10,000, 5,000, 20,000 into some land and build something on it. And guess what my brother did? He put the money in imagine if my brother had not invested the 10, 20,000, right? Then my brother would have lost the 20,000 or just wasted the 20,000 and didn't have the money or the land. But at least now he at least has the land. He hasn't done much on it, but at least he has a land, right? So that's what an investment is. And for us in America, looking at NATO, it doesn't look like an investment to me right now. It doesn't. It looks like a club. We're part of a club called NATO, but we're not in an investment, a defensive investment right now. We're in a club called NATO. The way it's going to look like an investment for us Americans if we have conditioned arrangements with NATO and the European Union. What I mean by this, when I say is the way it's going to look like us Americans is if we have arrangements and conditions that both parties have to meet when something happens. Thank you very much for the follow. So, that's the only way that this NATO thing is actually going to work for us, is that if we have conditions of, if you do this, this is what we're going to do for you. If you do this, this is what we're going to do for you, right? So NATO has to understand, the European Union has to understand, we're no longer going to send money blindly to anyone. Americans work too hard, and we have the strongest military in the world. We don't need to spend 16 to 20% of the NATO budget when Spain doesn't even want to spend 2% of their GDP, right? So there's going to be a conditional arrangements. We're going to see conditional and I've already sent letters out. And you're asking me what have I done, right? Listen, I was already in the service in the US, right? But now I've already sent letters out and I've told these people, look, we need to rearrange our agreements and have frameworks in place where our money, we can see where our money's going every month, every year, or every quarter, or every 6 months, right? That's an investment in the defense where we see, okay, Americans invest $700 million. What does it give us back? Does it give us back $1 trillion? Does it give us back $2 trillion? Because why are we spending $700 million into Europe? We're not getting a piece of Europe every year. So where is that investment going? Just to bullets and equipment for the Department of Defense or the Department of Europe? Where is that money actually going for every year? Because we're spending $700 million just on NATO. How many planes are we getting for that, right? How many soldiers are we getting for that, active duty, right? How many bases, how much land we're getting for that? Because the money is divided some way, right? And I'm sure as heck there's money going to different places. So we have to start seeing from the European Union and from NATO where our money's actually going to every single year, right? We want to start seeing our investments grow and get some benefits out of these investments. Europe still hasn't paid us back for the Cold War. We spent almost $2 trillion, about $200 billion for that period of time, and we haven't seen any return on our investment. Everything that we do in the United States from now moving forward, especially when it comes to NATO, when it comes to the US and our money, because they're quick to take our tax away when we work, right? The IRS and the US government is quick. Every single government is quick to take tax money out, right? But when it comes to them getting accountability and getting audited, oh, now there's no audits. They don't want to audit where our money's going. But when we're making money in our businesses and our jobs, and they want to audit us, no, you also are liable for some audits as well, right? Liable is probably not the right word, but responsible for some audits from our end, independent auditing, right? And that's what I've always said. We need to have another government agency. I've always said this to my brother, where lawmakers and officials, including agents, are audited. Because without this accountability factor, without checks and balances, we don't know where our money's going every single year. People are taking money out, and money's going into the pockets of God knows who. Look at Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi is supposed to be making between $150,000 to $200,000 a year, but Nancy Pelosi is one of the greatest investors in world history. She had accumulated a net worth of $200 to $400 million. And, she never started businesses. She just invested in the stock market. She's better investor than Warren Buffett. Nancy Pelosi, working at a job, only making $150,000 to $200,000 a year. So think about that for a second. We need to have checks and balances on every single government agency. And that starts with the JTTF. That starts off with the FBI, NSA, CIA, and all these three-letter agencies. that are hiding with contractors behind the scenes, then God knows what they're doing with money, and God knows what they're doing with people behind the scenes. These are the first people that we need to start investigating is what exactly are they doing behind the scenes? How are they collecting information, and where our money's going? Yeah, we got to analyze. We have to analyze, audit, and strategize what's actually going on with our money every single year when it comes to what the government is actually doing. Because it can't be that 350 million Americans who are with me, 350 million Americans we can't believe that 10,000 people are going to tell us how to put our money in their pocket. No. That stops tonight. 350 million Americans that are with me tonight, that are with me because of what I'm saying tonight, we're not going to allow 10,000 people to control how our money's being spent and going to their pocket. No. They got to listen to how we say our money's going to go into the government, because we're the population, right? And they're the government officials. They listen to us. That's what's supposed to happen, right? But has that been happening? No, because many government officials think they're the ones who are supposed to tell us how they should run government. But no, that's not how it's supposed to work. We tell them what we want from the government because we're the majority, right? We're the majority. We're spending our money into the government, right? And the government's supposed to do what we want them to do. If we want them to invest less money into NATO, they invest less money into NATO. If we want them to invest more into the military, they invest more into the military. This is what the government is supposed to do. It's not about somebody getting elected, becoming a government official, and then they're pocketing the money of 350 million Americans, or if they're a governor in a state, 10 or 20 or 30 million Americans. That is not the purpose of government. The purpose of, or like New York, for example, when we have mayors who are putting rules, and like trying to implement Sharia law type of frameworks, which are not American, right? Sharia laws do not belong in America. These Muslims law do not belong. Everyone has the right to practice what they believe in. But I don't believe in anything else but what I believe in. But what I'm saying is this: no one has the right to force their opinion on me. Now, do we have certain opinions that are strong and non-changeable? Of course, right? We believe in Jesus. We believe in Christ. Certain things we believe in America, in American history, in American culture, that we're not going to change for anyone. We're not going to change for anyone, right? If you're a Democrat, or if you're on the Republican side, the conservative side, or if you're in the independent side, that's what you believe in. Now, you're not, just because you're in one of those parties, you're not going to tell me how to live my life, right? I'll listen to you, but I'm not going to change my opinion. I'm not going to change my opinion just because you have your own opinion, right? And this is the problem with many people in society today, is that some people say, oh no, men and women, LGBT should be able to use the same bathroom. No, I don't believe in that. And men and women should not be able to use the same bathroom. That's what we have laws, and that's what we have genders. Medically, biologically, right? So no, certain things just are not supposed to happen, ladies and gentlemen. If you believe in something in your house, and in your house you want to let two people use the same bathroom, that's up to you. But when you're in public, when you're out and about in a public setting, no, you're not going to just start putting your own belief systems on us, because that's not what we believe in. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. But again, with the whole NATO thing, guys, you guys have to understand, right, that again, the whole NATO thing right now is fractured. We've all seen the news. We've seen from Spain, from the Prime Minister of Spain. We've seen it from France, Macron. We've seen it from Sturmer in the UK, the Prime Minister. He's getting bashed by his own in the UK. I don't know if you guys seen some of the in the Parliament of the United Kingdom, but that lady from the UK, I forget her name. She's been killing Sturmer, man. I don't know how. I don't know how she's not the prime minister, but she's been whooping that ass with Sturmer. I don't know if he's going to be the prime minister for a long time because she's doing a great job. I don't know if her party has enough people though, but she has done a pretty good job and staying consistent at least for the last 3, 4, 5 months now. And so here's all I have to say, ladies and gentlemen, is that the things that we believed, what we believed about NATO in the past, are no longer what we actually starting to see. We're starting to see some stuff very differently, right? We're seeing some changes. We're seeing some results. We're seeing it from our allies. We're not seeing the support that we should see for people who are paying billions and billions of dollars every year for Europe's safety. And Europeans should be ashamed of themselves because we helped them with 2 world wars. We saved their life with 2 world wars and the Cold War, Europeans, and America, that wasn't our war. You want to say this is not your war? That wasn't our war. We're across the ocean, right? But now when we're the ones asking you for help, it's not your war, Europe. It's not your war when we're asking you for help. But when you needed our help, Europe, when you needed our help, we had to jump in for you. When it was World War I and World War II and the Cold War, we had to jump in, Europe. But now that we're telling you, no, come on in. Oh no, this is not our war. You gotta send a memo. You gotta send faxes. You gotta send paperwork. Oh no, that's not our war. When America's asking for help, but when Europe needed the help and they were crying in tears and begging us, we went in, and that was not our war. That was not our war, Europe. But now, all of a sudden, this is not your war, right? So America gets to join Europe and fight for your freedom when it's not our war. When it wasn't, World War I wasn't our war, World War II wasn't our war, Cold War wasn't our war, Ukraine is not our war. Russia, we're not even close to Russia, but we defend you anyways. We send money to Ukraine, right? So that's not our problem. But guess what? We're still there helping you guys, saving your life, giving you safety every year. But that's not our problem. We're on the other side, right? We're on the other side of the world. Hi, Leo. How you guys up in the Bronx? Maria, William, Brewski. Everybody, how you guys doing tonight? So they wanna sound tough in Europe. And then when they need us to fight, when they need people to fight, they call Americans. They know we're the Wild West. They know we do this over here in America. They know we get down in America, so that they call us. It's like, I grew up in the projects, right? It's like the little Chihuahua syndrome, right? We have Europeans are the little Chihuahuas. Europeans are the little Chihuahua. They like to bark to Russia because they got the big dogs, America, right? So Europe is the little Chihuahua that likes to make a lot of noise. But when America, the big dog backs up and then Russia starts walking in, the little Chihuahua runs away. That's Europe, the little Chihuahua, right? The little dog, the little cat dog, the little mouse dog, right? So that's what Europe does, is that they talk all this trash. Oh yeah, we're gonna do this for you. We're gonna do that for you. We promise that. You saw what the NATO guy did to Trump. He went like this, guaranteed. We don't care about your fingers, your finger expressions. You know what I mean? We're sending billions of dollars. You think we care? That's a guarantee. Your fingers doing this is a guarantee. No, yeah, this is a guarantee. No, your thumbs twined is not a guarantee for us. Your thumbs twined is not a guarantee. We don't care about your thumbs twined, right? You want to talk to America? Oh, my thumbs twined is a guarantee. No, your thumbs twined is not a guarantee. Your thumbs twined is not a guarantee for Americans. We're spending billions and billions and billions of dollars every single year. Your thumbs have no guarantee for us Americans. Am I right or am I right? So these Europeans want to act tough. They're like little Chihuahuas, right? But when America leaves, they start running because they're near Russia, right? They're scared of Russia, right? When America leaves, they're not barking anymore because they got America to back them up, the big dogs. But when the little Chihuahuas by themselves in Europe, barking, right? And they see Russia right next door, they're not barking anymore. The little Chihuahua starts running away. And that's where Europe is. They become a bunch of little chihuahuas, the little Dalmatians, right? Who are only tough. They're only tough when America's around. They only give us guarantees. They only give guarantees because we're there. But when we need them, now there's no guarantees. It's like a bank. It's like somebody writing a check, and they have no money in the bank. They're just giving you a blank check, and then you go to the bank trying to cash a check, and there's no money in the bank. So that's why Europe, they're giving some empty promises to us. You know, and American politicians have been taking these empty promises for the last 20, 30, 40 years. Why we never changed the conditions since the Cold War? I'm surprised, aren't you? I'm surprised, right? So that's the funny part. It's like, oh yeah, we want to we want to protect Europe. No, listen. It's a conditional arrangement. It's a conditional arrangement where America, ladies and gentlemen, America is a protection of America, ladies and gentlemen, and the Western Hemisphere, specifically North American region, right? So if Europe wants to say whatever they want to say, we're not going to take a thumbs guarantee like the NATO president gave Trump. It's hilarious to me. No, we don't have to accept a thumbs guarantee. You know what I'm saying? What is that worth? Little Chihuahua's barking. Europe is a little Chihuahua, right? And they trying to give us guarantees. Like I said before, I grew up in the projects, right? And it's like you have a guy who's always talking smack, right? Always talking smack, thinking he's tough. And then when somebody like me walks in who's a hothead, or somebody like my brother walks in who's also a hothead, or somebody else who's a hothead, and they just don't want to hear nobody talk, and they get smacked in the mouth, now they shut up. That's how Europe is. They're a little Chihuahua, and America's the big dog, right? America's the big dog who allows Europe to say whatever they want to say. But what's the benefit of Europe? What's the benefit of Europe for us? Because we've spent billions and billions, now is on the trillions of dollars on the defensive budget. It's like a scam because what do we have to show for it? They don't even want to let us use their bases. And that's the crazy part. We're spending billions of dollars on them, and they're asking us to leave their country and not even use their bases. What right does European countries have to tell us not to use their bases when we've been protecting them for safety for almost 20 to 30, 40 years now? That's the crazy part. So I'm going to leave you guys here with this tonight. I know I've been here now for about 30 minutes or so. I want to thank you guys for coming with me on the live. It's been a very productive live. We initially started off, it was going pretty good initially. And but thank you guys for coming on the live. I think you guys learned some stuff about America. I went over that, the average American is spending between, I believe, $200 to $1,000 on defensive cost per year. 16 to 20% of the NATO cost is the cost of the of NATO that the America's spending, around 16 to 20%. And the cost that we're spending on the defensive budget, $700 to $900 billion per year. So I want to thank you guys for coming on my live, and I'll see you guys in the next time. What we're going to discuss is staying with NATO important for our future. That's what we're going to be discussing shortly after in another live. And again, thank you for coming on. If you haven't followed me, make sure to follow. Make sure to like the live and share. I have post quite a few videos on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and X. Make sure to follow my profile in all of those platforms. So if you guys see me on X, if you guys see me on Instagram, on YouTube, make sure to follow my platform. And I'm going to try to continue to improve every month, every week, making better, higher quality videos. I'm still trying to learn how to improve these videos on TikTok to deliver better sound, better visual, and better audio. So thank you guys again for tuning in with me. You guys have a good one.